action a day after global cues caused jitters on the last day. The Indian markets recovered today handsomely. Both Sensex and the Nifty ended the day a percent higher. Nifty Bank shown in trade rallying about 2% and thus ending at a record close. Mid-caps also mirrored the benchmarks and turned positive for this year. Surbhi Upadhyay is here with a detailed analysis of all that transpired on the last day. Surbhi, the bulls came back very clearly in style despite the consolidation seen yesterday.
What a heady rally we've seen this Tuesday. Everything really turning around in the last 1 hour and the bulls storming back into the ring. Some hectic buying is what we saw, and because the nature of the stocks that moved aren't really some small caps that we're talking about. We're talking Reliance Industries surging 3%, many of the big banks moving higher. I'll come to that list in just a moment. The other interesting facet was that mid-caps have resumed their recovery rally as well. The mid-cap index was absolutely in step, in sync with the Nifty. The Nifty itself now just a couple of points away from the 11,500 mark all over again. So let's boil this down to stocks. Banks were very, very strong. The Nifty Bank surging 2%. And take a look at the constituents. So if you're talking SBI, ICICI Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Yes Bank, I mean, you name it, the entire list, IndusInd, Axis, HDFC Bank, every single bank on the large cap screen was firing away today. Beyond banks, there were other big winners as well on the index. NTPC's great run continues with a 4% up move. Vedanta, RIL, as I said, was powering away with a 3% up move. And Bajaj Finance, again getting back to the of 3,000 odd. The other key gainers included the likes of Titan, Grasim and Gale. These were some of the other winners of the day. So what didn't work? Some names that were cooling off after the recent rally. IOC would be one of them. Coal India was a little subdued as well. And some of the technology stocks, because of concerns around US demand, BFSI or banking sector demand, that played out on Tech Mahindra, Infosys and TCS. These stocks were on the lower side of the screen. Now let me come to the mid-cap party. And here it's a long list of stocks that were looking good. Arvind, Repco Home, Union Bank, largely speaking, financials even beyond the Nifty 50 did well. So whether it was Karnataka, Canara Bank, most of these stocks on the upside. Jet Airways is good run continued. Again, about a 5-6% up move today. Interglobe also managed a 3% up move, but SpiceJet took a bit of a breather. Other gainers included DHFL, consumer names like Trent and Pidilite, and also a Dilip Buildcon. Just a few names on the downside, not too many to count today. SpiceJet, as I said, did cool off a little bit. Arvind Fashions ended down 4 to 5% now that it's out of the trade-to-trade segment. And Prestige Estates saw some profit taking. But it's been a very, very smart and very stunning reversal by the bulls. The question is whether it's going to last and whether we can take aim at all.
Okay, Surbhi, thanks for joining in with that. Been in focus all week. Jet Airways was day after yesterday's board meet, saw banks decide to take control of the airline, closed with gains of close to 7%. In the Aviation Secretary Pradeep Singh Kharola met Jet officials today to take stock of the airline's operational plans. And as lenders take over Jet, liquor baron Vijay Mallya, whose defunct Kingfisher Airlines went down in 2012 after facing a severe financial crisis, has hit out on Twitter about this. In a series of tweets referring to bankers, Mallya welcomed Jet's bailout, but further said, and I'm quoting now, "wish the same was done for Kingfisher." Accusing the government of double standards, Mallya said, and I'm quoting again, "I invested over 4,000 crore rupees into Kingfisher Airlines to save the company and its employees, not recognized and instead slammed in every possible way. The same PSU banks let India's finest airline with the best employees and connectivity fail ruthlessly. Double standards under NDA." End of quote. Mallya also reiterated his offer to pay off dues. He tweeted, and I quote again, "I repeat once again that I have placed liquid assets before the Honorable Karnataka High Court to pay off the PSU banks and all other creditors. Why do the banks not take my money? It will help them to save Jet Airways if nothing else." End of quote. Okay, let's move on. But what exactly are investors betting on when it comes to Jet Airways? Anisha Jain is here with the Street View. Anisha, what are brokerages and experts saying after yesterday's board meeting outcome?
Oh, well, yes, Jet Airways was up in double digits today because the resolution plan of the lenders got approved by the board yesterday. As a result of that, not only a 1,500 crore fund infusion would be made immediately, but also there will be a bit of management change. Because remember, Naresh Goyal and his wife have stepped out of the board, as well as an Etihad board seat has got emptied, and there'll be fresh leadership when it comes to Jet Airways. Also, the stock was out of F&O ban today, and that also led to that big drastic move. Separately, we've also got a bit of clarity on the timeline of this new strategic investor coming into the business. Now, remember, Mr. Rajneesh Kumar of SBI told us that he expects that the strategic investor would come into the business by the end of May itself. So now it gives a bit of business continuity and revival possibility for the investors, and that's why it is up in trade. Other than that, brokerages like Citi have also written a note on Jet Airways and the aviation sector. They talk about how this revival plan can give a temporary relief to Jet Airways, and a lot of these stranded and on-ground aircrafts might come back into the airlines, and that means it will be able to gain the lost market share. Remember, the market share for Jet Airways had come down to 11.4% in the month of Feb versus around 15% in Q2, and that was because Indigo and SpiceJet had eaten up into that share. Now with the temporary relief coming in, it is expected that Jet Airways might be able to regain some of the lost market share, and hence the optimism.
Okay, Anisha, thanks for that. Now, latest in the Reliance Communications Ericsson tussle, the Anil Ambani-led telecom company has moved the Supreme Court seeking IBC proceedings for itself. However, Ericsson has opposed Reliance Communications' insolvency plea. Remember, the Swedish telecom major received dues worth 576 crore rupees from Reliance Communications on the 18th of March. It may have to return that amount if the Anil Ambani Group firm undergoes insolvency proceeding. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear Reliance Communications' plea on IBC proceedings on the 28th of March. Now, the big headline from the economic space, the Finance Ministry and RBI officials are meeting today to finalize the borrowing plan for the first half of the next financial year. Remember, budget estimates pegged the gross borrowing figure for FY20 at over 7 lakh crore rupees. So what part of this amount may be borrowed during the first half of the financial year? Sapna Das is here with more on that. Sapna, what are your sources telling you on this?
So a quick look at the numbers that the government has already put out in terms of the borrowing targets for FY20. So 7.10 lakh crore is the number that we're talking about in terms of gross borrowings. Repayments are extremely high for FY20. So basically that number is around 2.36 lakh crore. If you net that out, you're left with the net borrowing of around 4.74 lakh crores. Now, generally the trend has been that the H1 calendar, the H1 borrowing calendar for any financial year generally in the last couple of years has generally got front loaded. So one of the major reasons also may be the heavy schedule of repayments that the government has factored in. For example, in June-July 2019 itself, the government is indicating repayments worth around 1 lakh crores. These are repayments for the earlier borrowings that they have done. So keeping all of that in mind, it may be quite possible that around 3.55 to say a broad estimate, very broad estimate, 4 lakh crore could be the actual borrowing amount that they might decide for the H1 calendar. Of course, the switches and the buybacks, all of that will also have to be kept in mind because that may change the quantum to that extent. Apart from this, it may be possible that they will not really change this estimate that they're given for FY20, though you'll have the new budget, the fresh budget in July. But generally, the borrowing calendar and the borrowing quantums, don't change that easily. At least that's what the expectation is, for July budget itself as well.
Okay, Sapna, thanks for that. But the big political story that we've been tracking for the last 24 hours, the Congress's minimum income guarantee pledge continues to dominate the political discourse a day after the party unveiled its bold promise. So Congress President Rahul Gandhi has called the scheme a surgical strike against poverty. He has also attacked the BJP for asking about the funding plan for the scheme. Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has hit back at the Congress President, asking him to explain why did the previous Congress governments fail to eradicate poverty.
हिंदुस्तान के 20% सबसे गरीब लोगों को हर साल कांग्रेस पार्टी की सरकार 72,000 रुपए बैंक अकाउंट में डाल के दे देगी। गरीबी पे ये कांग्रेस पार्टी का सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक, उन्होंने गरीब को मिटाने का काम किया, हम अब गरीबी मिटाने का काम शुरू कर देंगे। 5 साल में 3,60,000 रुपए।
ये टॉपअप स्कीम नहीं है। 20 के 20% परिवारों को 72,000 रुपया प्रति वर्ष मिलेगा। इस बात को लेकर कल कुछ उलझन थी। हर परिवार को 72,000 रुपया मिलेगा। 5 करोड़ परिवार, 25 करोड़ लोग। ये स्कीम विमेन सेंट्रिक है। ये 72,000 रुपया घर की गृहिणी के खाते में कांग्रेस पार्टी जमा करवाएगी।
Where is he going to get that money from? And if such a scheme is already giving so many true direct benefit to the people, we think it is just sort of giving a election time promise. They've been eradicating poverty since 1971 with Garibi Hatao program. If Garibi is still there after the Hatao program of Srimati Indira Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi first of all will have to answer that.
Meanwhile, a group of BJP workers, allegedly supporters of Rajya Sabha MP R.K. Sinha, raised slogans against the BJP candidate from Patna, Sahib Ravi Shankar Prasad, outside the Patna airport today. R.K. Sinha was considered as one of the top contenders for the Patna Sahib Lok Sabha seat. The BJP, however, chose to field Prasad. More from the political space, Union Minister Giriraj Singh has now confirmed to Network 18 that he will contest from Begusarai seat. Earlier, the Union Minister had expressed discontent with the BJP leadership in Bihar for changing his seat from Nevada to Begusarai without consulting him. The sitting MP from Nevada had also hinted that he may not represent Begusarai as the move by BJP hurt his self-respect. Actor and former Samajwadi Party lawmaker Jayaprada joined the Bharatiya Janata Party today. The BJP is likely to field her from Rampur, a constituency that she represented twice. Jayaprada, along with Amar Singh, was expelled from the Samajwadi Party in 2010 for her alleged involvement in anti-party activity. She fought the 2014 Lok Sabha polls on a Rashtriya Lok Dal ticket but lost. 7% growth is not creating jobs and India may not be growing at 7%. That's a blunt assertion word from former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan, who called for a revamp to figure out India's accurate growth rate. Speaking to Lata Venkatesh, Rajan proposed the setting up of an independent panel with eminent economists to lift the cloud over GDP data in India. Lata, in fact, also asked Rajan if he was approached by any political party to be the finance minister. Rajan did not issue an outright denial here, but he did call the question premature. In fact, Rajan even listed out his top priorities if he was to become the finance minister. Take a look.
Right now, some rating agency has marked down India's FY20 growth rate to below 7%, to 6.8. What's your own sense of the current India growth story over the next couple of years?
Look, I'm in the camp that I have no idea what the statistics are at this point. We've moved them up, down, we've changed them. I think what we need is a revamp to really figure out, what our true growth rate is. Certainly, I know one minister has said, how can we be growing at 7% and not have jobs? Well, one possibility is we're not growing at 7%. But really, I think the kind of demand coming from out there that seems to, at least at this point, anecdotal, but we'll know from the elections, is that we need economic growth that reaches us. That we need stronger sort of broad-based growth, which primarily for most people means good jobs. Okay. And what we need to do is focus on that. How do we create good jobs for the vast number of people who are leaving schools, who are leaving agriculture, who are leaving universities, in such a way that they can expand India's growth. A lot of people have said the population dividend should not become a population curse. This is the time when we need to make sure that that, in fact, doesn't happen.
Okay. If I can get a one-line answer from you, are you worried about the Indian Statistical Organization and the data put out?
Look, I'm not worried. I just think we need now to essentially clean up, find out what, in fact, is the source of confusion with the new GDP numbers, with the revisions, etc. And I would say setting up an impartial body to look at it is an important step to restoring confidence. And it may well be that that body pronounces do thus and such to rebuild confidence. But we absolutely need better confidence in our GDP numbers now, given the back and forth that we've had.
No, actually the bigger problem is that one unemployment report has been kept under the wraps, and that is why the fear that true data is not being revealed. I mean, the worry that it is getting politicized, the statistical infrastructure.
Yeah, sorry. I meant something broader than just the GDP number. The whole statistical apparatus, we need sort of some outside impartial views to give us a sense of, are we doing the right thing and have the right procedures been followed? This is an area where India has tremendous strength, tremendous respect in the past, and I think recent events, for whatever reason, have sort of muddied the waters. I think we need to reestablish confidence because certainly navigating without good numbers is really navigating in the dark.
If you got a shot at being finance minister or policy maker, what would your top 3 policies be?
Well, I think there are short-term issues. A number of economists, of which I was one, have put together a set of policy ideas, and they're out there for anybody to read. They're coming out in a book. But let me say very quickly that certainly I would focus on short-term actions that could put a lot of projects back on track that are still stuck, clean up the banks as quickly as possible and set them back on credit growth, some of which is happening. And third, try and find 2 or 3 key reforms which could unleash growth. Certainly one of them has to be how do we revive agriculture in a way that reduces distress. A second would be this issue of land acquisition. Can we learn from the best practices of the states and find methods that seem really fair, and in a sense also give states freedom to pick the method that works best for them so that we learn from each other's experiments, land acquisition, bank cleanup, as well as trying to find some key policies that would revive agriculture. These would be top priorities.
Okay, well, to repeat a question I've asked you before, have you been approached by any of the parties to take up a policy-making position if they were to win?
No, I think it's really premature to have these discussions. Look, I really think that this is an important election for India, and I also think we need a new set of reforms. I'd be happy to push those, ideas, and in fact, we are trying to do that more broadly to anybody who listens.
Here's the latest in the Mindtree takeover tussle. The board of directors of the company has decided not to proceed with a buyback. What the board has said is that at their meeting held today, they have decided not to proceed with the buyback of equity shares of the company. Further, the board has invited views from the directors on the unsolicited offer made by Larsen & Toubro shares of the company. After detailed deliberation, the board in this meeting today decided to immediately constitute the Committee of Independent Directors, or the IDC, in the interest of all stakeholders to provide their reasoned recommendation in respect of the unsolicited offer made by L&T for the consideration of the shareholders. All the independent directors will be a member of this, and this is going to be headed by Apurva Purohit, who is the lead independent director. He'll be the chairperson and spokesperson of the IDC. This is something that we had reported. Let's bring in Mugdha Warrior first to give us a quick update. Mugdha, you had spoken to the Mindtree management today morning as well. What are you picking up with respect to what lies ahead now?
Yes, as expected, the board meeting, today decided that there will not be a buyback of equity shares of the company, because remember, this proposition was difficult from the time that L&T made its public announcement for an open offer of 31% in Mindtree, and it also put out a detailed public statement of its plans for Mindtree in newspapers today. So it was very difficult for Mindtree to go ahead with it because they would have needed 75% shareholders' approval to go ahead with it. Now, as you mentioned, we had reported that an independent directors committee will be set up to be led by Apurva Purohit, which is what has happened at the board meeting today. Now, remember, as per L&T's plans and timeline, this, independent directors committee will have to give its recommendations by 10th of May because the open offer procedure closes on May 14th. Now, we had asked this question to Rosto Ravanan in our interview today about, what the board meeting was going to focus on today, considering the buyback was difficult, and he was non-committal in his answer. But, I think it is now up to the independent directors to guide the company on what lies ahead.
Nisha Podar had in fact broken that story. Mukta, just hang on. Nisha, you put this out earlier as well, and as the management was saying, this is the next step of action. So what happens now? If the IDC, for instance, votes against the quoting the press release unsolicited offer by L&T, will the deal then not go through? What are the options?
So L&T clearly, Kritika, has already got over 20% stake in Mindtree. Yeah. So there is no way that can be returned to VGS. So there's nothing that can be done by Mindtree about the huge block of shares that L&T has already bought into Mindtree. As far as open offer is concerned, let's be very clear about that it is primarily the minority shareholders, the institutional investors who will have to take their individual calls on that. What an independent directors committee will do is, first they have the fiduciary responsibility towards the non-promoter shareholders of the company. So they will be really analyzing the situation and will be giving a recommendation to the shareholders which is in the best interest of the long-term value of the shareholders here. On the other hand, remember, they will also be recommending to the board of Mindtree on their future course of action. Here again, as per law, the constitution of the independent directors committee was important, but what is not legally tenable on the board or the shareholders is their recommendation. It lies as a recommendation. But to answer your question, as per the corporate governance norms, and I'm sure the Mindtree board will try to keep that in spirit as much as possible, even though they have a tussle with L&T on this acquisition, they will have to take the route of independent directors committee recommendations. And what I also gather from my sources from the independent directors and the shareholders is that the long-term shareholder value needs to be preserved, but the independent directors will not decide on anything which is against or in favor of disrupting the operations of the company, and therefore the promoters' interest and the management's interest and their preference also comes into play. As far as buyback is concerned, let me also answer that bit. Buyback became extremely difficult. It was a tactical, strategic move by L&T of really going ahead with a public announcement so that it becomes very difficult for a buyback to be announced by Mindtree.
I mean, I think at this point they realized that that was a last-ditch effort, and hence they announced it, and they realized that it doesn't make sense. So the next big call would be on the open offer. Well, on that note, we will have to wrap up this edition of After the Bell. We will take this story forward later in the day, but for now, stay tuned. CNBC-TV18 Markets Today Talkback will take all the action forward on the other side of this very short break. Stay right there.